The sun had barely crested the tree-line when the hum began, low, electric, and unmistakably alien. Alex Marin froze mid-swing, his axe halfway through a knot of pine. It wasn't thunder, not the wind, and definitely not a bear. The noise pulsed like a heart made of circuitry, and then, as abruptly as it came, it stopped. He dropped the axe, listening. The forest held its breath. Then, with a whoosh that rattled leaves and stirred the scent of sap and earth, something sliced the air overhead, crashing 100 yards beyond his clearing. Smoke curled above the canopy. Alex cursed under his breath. Of course. He didn't live out here for company. 2 years off-grid, 35 miles from the nearest town, and somehow trouble had still found him. Grabbing his radio, useless since last winter, and his hatchet, he moved through the underbrush, senses prickling. The crash site was a shallow crater, still steaming. At its center sat a metallic structure. No, a pod, shaped like a teardrop, charred along its edges but whole. It hissed, then opened like a flower. Light spilled out, warm and unnatural. And then it stepped out. It was tall, maybe 7 feet, but hunched forward like someone accustomed to lower ceilings. Its skin was a dark, glistening gray-green, with folds like layered clay. 2 large eyes blinked, round and luminous. A series of metallic loops adorned its long neck, and a slender device floated in the air beside it, glowing faintly blue. The alien looked around, took a breath, and promptly sneezed. Ah yes. Oxygen. Spore levels manageable. Its voice echoed directly into Alex's head, accented but precise. You are the local biological interface. Alex blinked. What? The alien straightened. Excellent. I am Professor Enari of the Archival Species Engineering League. I require shelter building services. Immediate. With high resilience to thermal variance and emotional stress environments. Alex stared. You want a cabin? The professor tilted its head. Correct. A terrestrial shelter. Durable. Comfortable. Possibly photonic-powered. I assume you are a specialist in such constructions. Your presence here suggests so. Alex looked down at his flannel, his mud-caked boots, the sweat on his brow. He supposed, in some galactic sense, that qualified him. The alien continued. You will be compensated in knowledge or matter-forming privileges, pending your civilization's ethics. Right. Okay. Sure. Why not? Alex took a deep breath. What happens if I say no? I perish, Enari replied calmly, and your atmosphere is flagged as hostile in the League's records. You may also become a footnote in my posthumous dissertation. Great. Alex sighed, rubbed his temples. How long do I have? 14 solar cycles. Starting now. The floating blue device beeped once. Alex turned back toward his camp. You'd better be useful with a hammer. I am intimately familiar with over 4 million building methods across 97 planets, Enari said, falling into step behind him. Though I have never touched a hammer. The walk back was tense, quiet save for the alien's occasional commentary on trees, insects, and the curious design of human boots. At the edge of the clearing, Alex gestured to his partially built shelter, nothing fancy, just a frame with solar panels propped awkwardly on logs. The professor studied it like a critic at a gallery. This is quaint, Enari said, but inadequate for long-term survival. Emotional metrics are unsatisfactory. You said you needed a shelter, Alex muttered. Didn't say anything about emotions. My species' physiology is linked to mood stability. We require aesthetically calming environments. Sharp corners are a danger. Alex pinched the bridge of his nose. So, you want a luxury cabin. In the middle of the woods. In under 2 weeks. With sustainable energy and thermal equilibrium, Enari said brightly. And mood lighting. That is vital. Alex glanced at the sky, wondering what he'd done to deserve this. He was just starting to find some peace. Now he was building a house for a neurotic extraterrestrial professor with mood-sensitive organs. You know this is insane, he muttered. To you, perhaps. To me, this is field research. Enari stepped closer, inspecting the panels. Fascinating. You harness solar radiation? Primitive, but charming. Yeah, well, We don't have antimatter cores lying around. Alex paused, watching as Enari hovered a hand near the solar cells. Don't touch that. I was merely scanning. Your craftsmanship is adequate. The professor looked around. Do you live here alone? Alex hesitated. Yeah. No communal structure, no mate-bonded unit? Nope. Enari tilted his head again. Interesting. That will factor into the environmental customization. Humans are deeply impacted by isolation, yes. Alex gave a half-smile. Not this one. Silence stretched between them, not uncomfortable, just strange. Alex felt something shift. Despite the absurdity of it all, there was something oddly sincere about Inari's presence. Maybe it was the fact that he was clearly trying, even as he radiated superiority and disapproval. Back at the fire pit, Alex crouched to stir the coals while Enari sat on a log, awkwardly folding its limbs. The floating device hovered, projecting a rotating blueprint of some five-domed alien palace. That's not going to work, Alex said. You want something sustainable and emotional, I'll build it my way. Enari blinked. Are you certain? My design is optimized for planetary variance. Your design looks like a mushroom had an anxiety attack. Trust me. Enari was quiet a moment. Then, very well. I accept your proposal. You will build. I will advise. Alex nodded slowly. Deal. But if you screw with my tools, I'm sending you back to wherever you came from. A pause. Then, faintly amused, understood, shelter human. As the sun dipped lower, casting long shadows across the clearing, Alex stared at the pile of lumber and wire he'd set aside for a simple project, now transformed into a cosmic favor. He had 14 days to turn it into something extraordinary. Behind him, the alien professor was already humming, off-key, discordant, and completely alien. And for the first time in years, Alex didn't feel quite so alone. By dawn, the forest was a buzz of productivity, human grit and alien curiosity colliding beneath a sky smeared with low clouds. Alex stood beside the half-framed structure, mug of coffee steaming in one hand, the other sketching lines in the dirt with a stick. Enari hovered nearby, literally, thanks to the faint blue lift field generated by his belt module. His gaze flickered between Alex's diagram and the half-finished frame like a professor disappointed in a student's term paper. This angle will create thermal inconsistency across the southern wall, Enari announced. You risk interior fluctuation during peak radiation hours. It's called a sunroom, Alex replied without looking up. People enjoy sunlight. It's not just for efficiency. Enari frowned, or at least Alex assumed that's what the subtle facial contortion meant. Enjoyment. Fascinating. My species processes photons through dermal osmosis, but the concept of pleasure, luxury, still feels wildly inefficient. That's because you're used to building survival tanks, not homes, Alex said. He tossed the stick aside and rose, stretching. This is a home. Or it will be. Enari floated downward, touching the ground with an odd reluctance, as though Earth's gravity personally offended him. So far, you've acquired rudimentary timber, a crude electrical grid, and a composting toilet with questionable sealing. I'm still working on it, Alex said through gritted teeth. And he was. The cabin had become more than a task, it was a quiet obsession. He'd spent the night rethinking every element. Solar placement. Insulation from both weather and noise. Natural wood finishes, smoothed and polished by hand. Not just a shelter, a sanctuary. And despite himself, he wanted Enari to approve of it. They spent the morning dragging salvaged panels from Alex's hidden storage shed. Years of scavenging had left him with a hoarder's treasure trove, copper coils, weatherproof wiring, screws sorted by size in peanut butter jars. Enari catalogued each item with clinical enthusiasm, occasionally pausing to ask questions that made Alex reconsider how much he really knew. Why is this hammer asymmetrical? For leverage or intimidation? It's a claw hammer. It's made to pull nails. Ah, and this? Some kind of kinetic impact shaper. That's a shovel. Work began in earnest after lunch. Alex laid the foundation with renewed determination. Enari attempted to help, though his understanding of physical labor was more theoretical than practical. He tried to lift a beam telekinetically and nearly dropped it on himself. When Alex shouted a warning, the alien seemed genuinely perplexed. "You possess extremely fast vocal warning systems," he said, brushing off dirt. "Highly efficient in danger scenarios. I will note this." "You could also look before you float lumber over your head," Alex snapped. But he couldn't stay angry. Enari was trying, in his own strange way. He fumbled with tools, took readings from invisible spectrums, and occasionally offered helpful insights about pressure distribution and energy retention. Somewhere between teaching an alien how to use a power drill and arguing about wall thickness, the tension softened. Later, as the sun dipped behind the pines, they stood before the evolving cabin. The framework was complete. The support beams rose like skeletal limbs from the earth, already casting angled shadows over the forest floor. Alex wiped sweat from his brow and stepped back, satisfied. "You've made progress," Enari said, his tone almost admiring.
"Yeah.
"Not bad for 2 days," Alex said, sipping from his canteen. The alien's gaze drifted upward. "May I make a suggestion?" "That depends. I propose a curved ceiling. Dome-shaped. Your rectangular design is efficient but emotionally neutral. My people sleep under hemispheres to simulate orbital curvature. It soothes the basal ganglia." Alex blinked. "You want me to dome the roof? With what, exactly?" "Recycled optimism." Enari smiled, definitely a smile this time, oddly human. "I can assist. I possess a structural stabilizer. It's meant for seismic zones, but with adjustment, it can mold tension-resistant arches." Alex rubbed the back of his neck. "If you can shape the frame without turning the whole thing into an igloo, be my guest." The next few hours were a strange dance of alien tech and human improvisation. The stabilizer looked like a floating prism, emitting gentle pulses as it guided metal ribs into a shallow dome. Alex watched, equal parts awe and jealousy. It was elegant, faster than his best work, and weirdly beautiful. When the dome finally took shape, complete with insulated composite layers Alex hadn't even seen Enari assemble, it felt like the beginning of something new. He stood back, arms crossed. "It's not bad. Functional. Elegant. Emotionally harmonized." Enari nodded. "We are building not just a structure. We are manifesting a statement of cooperative ingenuity." Alex rolled his eyes. "Let's just get the wiring in before nightfall." They worked by lantern light, the interior buzzing with the scent of sawdust and ozone. Solar wiring ran along the inside beams, soon to be hooked to batteries salvaged from an old campervan. As they sealed the frame, Enari paused. "May I ask a question of personal relevance?" Alex grunted. "Sure. Why do you live out here? Alone, far from others. You are not what your media calls a survivalist. You seem more tired than paranoid." Alex hesitated, hands buried in his tool bag. "I had a partner. We started this place together. She got sick. City doctors said she'd need months. We came out here anyway. Thought fresh air would fix everything." He didn't say the rest. Enari, mercifully, didn't press. "Loss is not unfamiliar to me," the professor said quietly. "I was exiled for academic misconduct. A misclassification of a species under review. They called it incompetence." Alex looked up. "That why you're here? Field work to earn your way back in?" "Something like that." Enari's gaze didn't waver. "They think I lack judgment. That I understand theories but not people." Alex offered a small smile. "Welcome to Earth." They sat in silence as the wind picked up, rustling through pine needles. The cabin behind them glowed gently from within, lantern light seeping through the half-hung walls like warmth escaping from a sleeping bag. For the first time in years, Alex felt something beyond survival or solitude. Not peace exactly, but purpose. He glanced at the alien beside him, and then toward the half-built structure they'd somehow created together. "Let's finish this thing," he said. Enari nodded. "Tomorrow, we build a sanctuary." The third morning began with a disagreement over curtains. "They're decorative," Alex said, holding up a fabric swatch. "They add color, texture, warmth." "They trap particulate matter and restrict emergency exits," Enari replied, arms folded, an impressive sight, considering he had at least 4 of them when he concentrated. They're curtains, not prison bars. They are inefficient. Your priorities are skewed toward aesthetics. Alex set the swatch down with a sigh. We've been over this. You want a shelter that stabilizes your emotional state? That means comfort. Comfort means personality. Curtains have personality. Enari made a strange throat sound that Alex had come to interpret as intellectual disapproval. In my society, environmental construction is utilitarian. Form follows function. Nothing more. Well, this isn't your society, Alex said, gesturing to the cabin that had taken shape like a dream over the past week. The curved roof gleamed with fitted solar panels, the walls sealed tight with insulated wood and recycled composites. Inside, reclaimed furniture and hand-finished trim gave the place character. You asked for a shelter. I'm giving you something better. You are giving me something inefficient, Enari replied, voice cool. Something that serves your emotional preferences more than my survival parameters. Alex felt the words like a slap. You think this is for me? The air thickened. A bird chirped once and fell silent. Inari's gaze narrowed. You believe your emotional lens is universal. That your solutions are inherently superior. It is a common human fallacy. Alex stepped back, jaw tight. You have no idea what I've given to make this work. You think I needed this? To spend 2 weeks listening to an alien lecture me about particle flow and emotional geometry. I think, Enari said, voice low, that you needed someone to listen. Silence. Then softer, he added, perhaps I did too. Alex looked away, the anger draining slowly, replaced by something harder to name. He thought of Anna. Of the nights by her side, her breath shallow, her eyes always scanning the trees outside like she didn't trust they'd last. The cabin had been her dream, not his. Now he was building it for someone who would leave as soon as it was done. You want it your way, he said, voice flat. Fine. No curtains. No colors. No warmth. Just a dome with solar panels and no soul. He walked inside before Enari could respond. The next day passed in a strained quiet. They spoke only when necessary. Measurements, angles, material inventory. The work continued, but the energy had changed. Where there had been collaboration, there was now formality. Efficient. Distant. Alex didn't know why the argument sat so heavily on him. Maybe because he'd come to enjoy Inari's strange questions. The way he tilted his head when trying to understand sarcasm. The way his eyes gleamed when he learned something new. For a being from beyond the stars, he had started to feel oddly familiar. The break came late in the afternoon. Alex was installing a skylight when the ladder slipped. He fell hard, landing shoulder first on the ground. Pain shot down his side, and he groaned, cursing the project and the stars alike. Within seconds, Enari was beside him, hands glowing with diagnostic light. "You've fractured your scapula," he said, scanning. "Minor displacement. Painful but non-fatal." "Thanks for the medical update, Doc," Alex grunted. "I can administer a stabilizer," Enari offered. "It will numb the area and begin cellular alignment." Alex waved him off. "I'll deal." Enari hesitated. "Why refuse aid?" "Because I don't need fixing," Alex snapped. "Not by you. Not by anyone." Enari went still. "Then why build this at all?" Alex opened his mouth, then closed it. The silence that followed was heavier than pain. Finally, Enari sat beside him, his voice quieter than Alex had ever heard it. "When I was exiled, I thought I was being punished for error. For misclassification. But in truth, they feared I saw too much. That I felt too much. I catalogued a dying species once, and I couldn't stop weeping. That is not an acceptable trait for a League professor." Alex turned his head. "You cried for a species? They had no shelter. No chance to survive. I documented their extinction in real time." Inari's fingers clasped together. "It broke me." The wind stirred the trees overhead. Alex listened, the ache in his shoulder nothing compared to the pressure in his chest. "You're not broken," he said finally. "You're just not cold." Inari looked at him, something flickering in his eyes. Neither spoke for a long moment. Then, slowly, the alien stood and extended a hand. Alex took it. That night, they worked again, not just on walls and circuits, but on meaning. Inari began suggesting subtle improvements not just for efficiency, but ambience. Color temperature matters, he admitted, helping Alex install warm LEDs. I find this hue calming. They debated furniture layout like philosophers. Inari adjusted the window placements for starlight views. Alex carved a small insignia into the wall beam, a fusion of both their names, stylized like a crest. Inari touched it once, reverently, and said nothing. The cabin was nearly complete. One final room remained, the interior sanctuary. Alex had left it for last on purpose. He handed Inari a set of wooden tiles carved with symbols: alien, human, abstract. What are these? Inari asked, eyes gleaming. Your call, Alex said. Whatever you want the heart of the place to be. Inari hovered over them like a scholar over sacred text. He chose 3 and placed them above the central arch. One symbol was for resilience, one for memory, and one for balance. Alex watched as the alien stood back, silent, almost reverent. There was no mockery now. No efficiency debates. Just respect. I think, Inari said, this may be the first structure I have ever truly inhabited. Alex nodded. Good. And for the first time, the shelter truly felt like a home, for both of them. The wind changed the night before the storm came. Alex noticed it first, the scent of ozone riding on a colder draft, distant thunder grumbling through the mountains like a warning too old to ignore. He stood on the porch of the nearly finished cabin, hands wrapped around a tin mug of reheated coffee, and watched the trees sway in cautious rhythm. Behind him, Inari calibrated the solar inverters one last time, his movements precise but slower than usual, as if he, too, felt something coming. They're looking for you, aren't they? Alex asked without turning. There was a pause. Yes. How close? Close enough to reach me by nightfall. Maybe sooner. Alex nodded slowly. He didn't ask how Inari knew. Some things didn't need explaining. Inside the cabin, light filtered through the dome in soft amber bands. The solar system hummed, storing every drop of daylight left before the sky turned. Their sanctuary was complete, insulated, functional, beautiful in its odd harmony of species and styles. But its quiet peace had always been temporary. A refuge, not a forever. Inari stepped out onto the porch beside him. He didn't float anymore, not unless it was required. That had been one of the subtler changes. He liked feeling the earth now, Alex suspected. Liked the ground beneath his feet. I thought I'd have more time, Inari said, voice barely audible over the rustle of pine. They send ships for anyone who shows empathy? Alex asked. Not officially. But I was warned. Field assignments are tolerated only as long as they remain sterile. I compromised that expectation. Alex took a sip, then stared into the tree lean. Because you cared. I didn't mean to, Inari admitted. But I did. This place. It mattered. Alex set the mug down. So what now? You leave before they arrive. I must. And if you don't, they'll extract me. With force. They stood there in silence, 2 silhouettes carved against the failing light. Alex clenched his jaw. You could hide. They would find me. Then fight. Inari looked over, something flickering in his expression. You would risk yourself for that? Alex didn't answer right away. The truth was heavier than words. He remembered Anna's voice, soft in the evenings as she talked about making the cabin into something more. A school. A place of learning and peace. She had believed in the kind of connection that defied fear. In healing, even between species. Maybe this was that chance. I already did, Alex said quietly. Every beam in this place, every nail, we built something worth defending. Inari exhaled, not air, but something that resembled it. You taught me how to build with my hands. You made room for warmth. That is not done lightly in my culture. Then don't run from it. The first drops of rain hit the porch with careful deliberation. Then came the hum, subtle at first, then louder. Not mechanical. Not natural. A vibration that seemed to reach into the bones. Alex recognized it instantly, though he'd never heard anything quite like it. Enari turned to face the sky. They are here. A ship broke through the clouds, sleek and soundless, its hull shimmering with refracted starlight. It hovered above the treetops, casting a shadow wider than the clearing, its descent a ballet of inevitability. No alarms. No weapons drawn. Just presence. Absolute and undeniable. A low tone pulsed from the vessel, and a voice echoed across the clearing in an untranslatable language, one that Alex somehow understood anyway. Professor Enari. Stand down. Prepare for reclamation. Enari didn't move. He stared upward, unmoving, unreadable. Alex stepped beside him. You're not going alone. You cannot stop them. I'm not trying to. I'm just not letting you stand here like you didn't become someone worth fighting for. The ship responded to the standoff with silence. Then, slowly, a beam of light extended downward, a perfect column reaching the earth like a divine elevator. Inari's breath caught. If I step into that, I will be gone. Reassigned. Reconditioned. They will undo what I've learned. Alex's voice was low. Then don't give them a version of you that forgot this place. Enari stepped forward, toward the beam. And paused. Instead of walking into it, he reached down and pressed something into Alex's hand. A small cube, warm, pulsing with faint blue light. It holds my findings. My memories. If they take me, I want this to remain. Alex closed his fingers around it. You think they'll let you go? Enari looked over his shoulder. I don't know. Then, without another word, he stepped into the light. Alex shielded his eyes. The beam grew brighter, and for a moment, it seemed to pull every shadow inward. Then, silence. The ship lifted into the storm, vanishing with a sound like reversed thunder. And he was gone. The forest held its breath. Alex stood alone on the porch, rain wetting his shoulders, cube pulsing gently in his hand. He didn't know if Enari would ever come back. Didn't know if they would let him remember what they'd built. But as he turned back toward the cabin, their cabin, he saw the light still glowing through the windows, warm and steady. He went inside. Not to wait, but to preserve. And to prepare for what came next.